Just a heads up, this is a very long review, so I have put timestamps in the video description. Feel free to jump straight to the part you're interested in if you don't have the time to sit through the whole review. Please do aware of slight spoilers ahead though. Now with that out of the way, let's get it on then. Monark has a lot of things and most of them are very strange game designs, so sorry beforehand if my explanations come off as confusing at parts. Basically, this game has three main things for its gameplay: the exploration, the combat, and the character customizations. Well, duh, which JRPG doesn't have those three things, you may be wondering. Don't be so hasty there, my dude. Let me go over one by one in details and you will see why I think this game is very strange. First, let's talk about the exploration. You have a main hub of a small classroom where your gang of misfits gather that let you do some small talk with everyone, and from there you need to get to the destination required by the plot, watch some cutscenes, get into some fight, watch some more cutscenes, a new area opens up, then you get back to your main hub and then try to make your way to the new destination required by the plot, watch some more cutscenes to get into more fights, rinse and repeat. Sounds pretty simple to follow so far, right? Good, because it's going to get a lot more complicated very soon. Unlike other JRPGs where the explorations simply only require you, the player, to go from point A to point B, with maybe some dungeon gimmicks here and there standing in your way to make your journey not so smooth, every destination in this game has a puzzle to get you away from reaching it, and most of these puzzles are more like what you would find in a survival horror game, not a JRPG. Let me give you an example with one of the earliest puzzles in the game. In one of the classrooms in the first area you started in, you can find a safe, but you have no idea what's the numbers to put in to unlock the safe. You get out of the room to go down the hallway a little bit and you find a closed door blocking your way. There you can ask a student from the other side of the door for the passcode to the safe and receive a hint that is the last 4 numbers from her student code. You then have to search for that student's record from the list of students, find her student's code and then crack the safe to be able to get the code to open the door blocking your way. I do question why there are so many safes so readily available in a school, and why are these characters so nonchalantly writing out their inner thoughts on memos and then just laying them out in the open for everyone else to read. But it's a rather unique approach to puzzle solving in a JRPG, which requires you to pay more attention to your surroundings as well as items and information you have on hand, and I quite like it when I first started the game. But the experience is unfortunately soured by another mechanic in the game, the madness gauge. Due to plot-related reasons, the search areas are covered in fog that slowly drives those who wander too long in it into madness. So while you are exploring and trying to solve the puzzle at hand, your madness gauge will slowly fill up until it reaches 100%, which will then forces you to go back to the infirmary to get treatment. It isn't that bad at first since the search areas aren't that big yet and the puzzles are still somewhat simple, but as the game progresses, the areas get bigger and bigger and the puzzles get more and more cryptic. So what I first found to be rather interesting idea that adds a lot to the eerie atmosphere of the game, quickly becoming an annoying mechanic that really obstructs the pacing of the game. Thankfully, there are no random encounters in this game, so at least you don't have to worry about that. Instead of random battle, there are set battles you can purposely get into by dialing a phone call. No, I'm being serious here. By dialing certain phone numbers, you will get transported to the other world, separated from the school you just resided in a few seconds ago, be confronted and fight with these beings called legions. Why and how can you get transported to another world via a phone call? Because anime, I guess? Anyway, there are a few ways you can make a phone call. I know this sounds really dumb, but please bear with me a little bit here. First, it's just inputting random numbers into your phone, but this is a sure way to be greeted with a game over since enemies in these battles are way over-leveled compared to your party. Secondly, while exploring in the foggy areas, your phone may randomly ring. If you pick up your phone while it's ringing like this, you just accepted a death call, and it's also a sure way to see the game over screen because enemies in these battles are also way over leveled, which I don't know why is it a thing here because you can easily and safely ignore these calls while exploring. The phone calls just automatically stop after a few seconds anyway. Third, when you first arrive at a foggy area, you will be given a certain phone number, which automatically got registered into your phone number list. This phone number will get you into battles with enemies more suited to your party's level at that point in the story, and these battles probably will be your main go-to to crack levels. Also, when you first clear a battle of this kind, the death calls I mentioned earlier will no longer appear in the area, which just makes me further question why it was a thing in the first place. Fourth, when you reach the end of a foggy area, you will see a pile of stacked up cell phones ringing. You can approach it and pick up the call, which you will then be transported to a plot-related pile. Do this twice and by the third time you will get to face the boss of the current story arc. At first, I thought this was pretty neat as it means I can completely ignore normal battles and just go straight to the plot-related ones and replay any past battles at any time if I so desire. But the game's progression kinda messes this up by a lot, both story-wise and gameplay-wise. The game doesn't use the usual level up system where characters naturally become stronger the more they fight. Instead, you gain stock spirit points after a battle, and the better you perform in a battle, the more points you can earn. Then later on, you can level up the character of your desire with the spirit points you've gathered via menu. This sounds pretty great on paper because it gives you the freedom of which party member you want to get stronger anytime you want, but due to plot reasons, after every story arc, your human ally will leave your party and be replaced with a new character. This is repeated until you've met all your potential party members, which are these four: Hinata Nozomi, Date Ryotaro, Tsukuradai Kokoro, and Yuda Shinya. And every time a human ally first joins you, they join at level 1. And that's not all, you also gain a new legion after every story arc, and the legions also join at level 1. All while the enemy just keep getting stronger and stronger as you progress through the game. This makes it so instead of feeling like I'm progressing through the game in a straight line, I feel like I was just going sideways most of the time until I reach the boss, and by the time I'm halfway through the game, it just becomes kind of a chore as I have to invest increasingly more time to have the new death weights keeping up with the rest of the party, while making sure my overall party was at the right level for the enemies I was facing. The overall experience is further worsened because of the leveling system in this game. You see, in this game, you can't just pump a character full of experience points and they'll automatically level up for you and you can call it a day. The character's levels are directly tied to their skill trees, which means that every time you want to level up a character, you need to open said character's skill tree and then either unlock a new node or level up an old node on the tree. Admittedly, it's a pretty cool idea on paper in my opinion, as it gives a feeling of important decision making to the player. Do you stock up on the spirit points so you can unlock or level the skills that you think would be useful in combat? Or do you spend points on the less useful skills because you want the stats gained from the level up more? But ultimately, the whole levels being tied to the skill tree thing just become a massive pain in the ass as you would eventually become too occupied with playing catch up to the enemy levels because of the earlier mentioned problem of rotating party members. Well, the grinding wouldn't be too bad if the combat is at least enjoyable, right? You're probably wondering. Well, about that, it's complicated to say the least. The combat in this game takes place in a pocket space separated from the school called the Other World. You and the enemy takes turn moving the characters around to fight each other, and unlike some other famous tactical RPGs out there like, say, Fire Emblem, where characters move increase, characters in this game have a radius of movement and they can freely move anywhere within that radius, provided there are enough space for the characters to slip by. The direction the character is facing when ending a turn plays a major factor, as a character being attacked from behind takes extra damage and can't counterattack. And not just that, if a character attacks an enemy and that enemy is also in the field of attack of another character, the other character will jump in and do a supporting attack. The fields of attack also vary a lot between characters. The main character and the sword-wielding legions, for example, have the shortest range and field of attack with a range of about only 3 meters right in front of them. while the halberd-wielding characters have a range of 4 meters, and their normal attack does a sweeping motion that can hit multiple enemies at once at the cost of not being able to trigger support attacks. But aside from normal attacks, the characters also have a wide array of physical and magical skills that come with all sorts of range of attack too. Because of how combat plays out, there's a very heavy emphasis on moving the characters around the most efficiently. The character placement focus is made extra apparent thanks to the option called Deter. After a character has finished their turn, another character of your party can use the Deter option to give up their turn to the character that just finished their turn, provided they are in range of each other, so the Deter option can be applied. Meaning that with careful planning, you can almost double the turns you have on your hands to move the characters around. But the Deter option doesn't come free, as for each time a character is given a new turn to act, their madness gauge goes up a little bit, 5% for the first time, 10% for the second time, until the gauge hits 100% and the character goes into berserk state, where they have increased attack, but decreased hit rate and defense, and you losing control of said character. And worst of all, said character will automatically die after 3 turns in berserk state. Because of how risky the berserk state is, it is your best interest to avoid it at all costs. What's the big deal? Just avoid abusing data and everything's all good? You're perhaps thinking so? Well, hate to break it to ya, but things ain't so simple. For you see,
you are not dealing with your average JRPG anymore.
This game doesn't have MB like your normal JRPG. The physical skills cost HP and the magical skills make the madness gauge goes up. So there's only so many times you can use magical skills and the deter option before your characters all go mad from skill appeals. There are 2 things to fight off the ever-increasing madness. You either use an item to tone the madness down, but those things cost spirit to buy and I ain't gonna waste more time crying than I need to. Or you can transform into the awakened state, where not only you can get rid of the madness you've been accumulated, you can also use any magical skill with no madness required, and also gain access to an ultimate skill usable only in the awakened state. And if you manage to achieve both awakened and berserk state at the same time, you can enter the enlightened state, where you can gain benefit of both awakened and berserk state with none of the drawbacks, and another ultimate skill that is usable only in this enlightened state. Sounds pretty OP, right? So what's the catch? Well, the catch is that the awakened state only lasts 3 turns, and if you want to enter the awakened state, you need to wait several turns, psyching the characters up 25% awake per turn by using the skill resolve, or throw the character right into the middle of the enemy so they can slap your character's ass around until your character is 100% awake. And the biggest catch of them all, only human characters can manually enter awakened state. Legions don't have the awakened gauge, nor the option to resolve themselves, and most of the time you only have 2 human characters available in your party, the main character and your buddy for the current story arc. In order to get your legions to enter the awakened state, you need to abuse the main character's unique skills that allow him to share status effects that he currently has with other party members. But you need to be aware that he will share absolutely every effect, including the bad ones, and for some unholy reasons, status effects in this game have really high chance to hit your character. Poison or bleeding are no big deal, but being hit with confusion or charms and you can kiss your player face a goodbye and watch your party slowly being pummeled to death. As you can see, there's a lot to take in regarding the combat, and I think the basic of the combat system itself is pretty solid, with plenty of options you can take to approach the battle. However, the scope of the battles just keep getting bigger and bigger as you progress through the story, so grinding will just keep getting more and more tedious and the combats just become kind of unfun later in the game, where you're just dragging yourself through needlessly longer and longer battles just so you can see the next story segment. Also, after every battle, the main character will gain stats up for his ego stats, which are stats for his 7 desires. These stats can also be raised by the dialogue choices as well as personality quiz you take at various points in the game. To my experience, these stats don't have much an impact on the game. They are only needed to open some of the game's special treasure chests to gain some bonus stats, and some of the equipment require certain stats to be above certain threshold to be used. Speaking of equipment, let's talk about the last thing we need to know about the gameplay, the character customization. You can customize the legions you have in your hand to your liking, from how tall they are, to how their hairstyles look like, right down to their voices too.
いざ尋常にこんなものか
And you can unlock even more customization options with achievements you gain throughout the game, so there's a lot to play around with. Even the equipments you put onto the legions change how they look too, but in exchange, the human characters can't use equipment at all. It's honestly pretty cool that the game allows you to do all this customization. But to that I got to ask, why though? From a gameplay perspective, the human characters not being able to use equipment make them really fall behind the Legion's task. Why? I guess it's to balance out the fact that only human characters can enter awakened state or something. I don't know, it's a very odd design choice to me. From a purely cosmetics perspective, you can only ever see the legions when you're in battle, and you could only ever have a really good look at them when in menu, so I don't really see much of a point to the whole customization thing. It's somewhat useful to distinguish one legion from another when in battle, but to that, do we really need a whole separate mechanic for that? There are many other things in this game that need brushing up in my opinion. Whew. That was a lot just talking about the gameplay alone. Next, I'll talk about the story, so if you're one of those who are spoiler-phobic, please skip to the timestamp shown on screen. I'm not going to spoil the whole game or any major plot points, but to be able to properly say what I think the game did right and wrong with the story and its characters, some slight spoilers are unavoidable, I'm afraid. On a certain beautiful day, Shin Megami Academy suddenly found itself isolated from the rest of the world by a barrier, and mysterious fogs appear all throughout the academy. Anyone who wanders too long inside the fogs is slowly driven to madness and reduced to a zombie-like state and manner. The main character woke up in the middle of the fog with no recollection of what happened before waking up. Then he suddenly got pulled into another world via a mysterious phone call. To defend himself and others, the main character made a pact with a mysterious being called Vanitas and became the pact bearer of Vanity. Not counting the main character, there are 7 people who made a pact with a Monark to become 7th pact bearers, representing 7 deadly sins, and it is they who made the fog appear and trapped everyone and the academy inside the barrier, or so the main character was told. In order to clear the fog of madness and to free everyone trapped inside the academy, the main character and his friends resolved to take down all the pact bearers. That is basically the premise of the story in a nutshell. The story started off pretty strong, with mysteries coming up one after another, and that combined with the eerie atmosphere the academy and the fog give off made me hooked and couldn't wait to find out how the story develops. But my enthusiasm for the game's story got cut short pretty fast as soon as I defeated the first boss of the game. I mentioned this problem briefly during the gameplay section earlier, so my apology for repeating it again. But the problem is that the story plays out in a very formulaic structure where you are introduced to a human party member. That character becomes your buddy and accompanies you for the rest of the story arc. You got introduced to the antagonist of the current story arc, get into 2 story battles in the other world, see fragments of memory of the antagonist, and then finally get to face the antagonist in the 3rd and final battle in the other world. Then you move on to the next story arc and repeat step 1. This formulaic story development structure made the story bit of every story arc feels rather repetitive and somewhat similar to each other, even if the characters involved are very different from one another, and that ultimately cheapened the excitement of seeing how the story plays out to me. That's not to say that the game lacks plot twists or anything. There are plenty of those, especially in the latter half of the game, and some are pretty good even. Also, because of the rotating cast, you only really get to see the party member interacting with each other in the hub and in some more cutscenes after a story arc ends, and I think that is such a crime to do, because to me, one of the most interesting things in a JRPG is watching how the party members interacting with each other, whether it's just them playfully teasing each other during peaceful time, or them consoling and encouraging each other after a tragedy happens. This game only has one active human character being active in a story arc, effectively kills off such moments and made the dialogue just a lot more dry than it should be, and the whole thing is made even worse because the main character is a silent protagonist. So, for most of the time, you only get to see your current human body monologuing about their own motivations, commenting on the current situation or the antagonist's actions, and the main character just stands there looking stupid. With that said though, I do find the antagonists act as pretty good voice to your bodies, as they share somewhat similar circumstances with each other, but due to the differences in ideologies, they can't help but clash, and you get to see enough of both sides that even if you don't actually agree with the antagonist's ways of doing things, you can somewhat understand where they're coming from, and some are pretty reliable even. Nozomi and Hitotsubashi both are student council presidents, and both seek to do what's best for the student body, but Nozomi lacks confidence in herself and only acts as others want her to, and ultimately have to step down from the president position as the result. Whereas Hitotsubashi knows that he's the one with the wisdom and power to ensure safety to everyone under his wings, so he needs to make absolutely sure that everyone follows his guidance, even if it means brainwashing everyone and becoming a dictator. Date and Tsumabuki both suffer unjust tragedies in life. Tsumabuki laments his sorry state of being and curses everyone to suffer a similar fate as him with great regret, because deep down he knows that he is wrong, but he just can't bear to see anyone else being happy and normal while he suffers alone, whereas Date just say fuck it and man the fuck up. Kokoro and Ikariya both are shunned by their peers. Kokoro was shunned because she was too smart and too socially awkward to fit in with everyone her age, and resorts to retreat into her own bubble, never minding whatever happened around her, even though deep down she just really wants to be friends with everyone else. Ikariya was bullied because of his odd behaviors, but he seeks to take vengeance against his bullies and has a twisted admiration to Kokoro because he thought Kokoro was also a bully, but didn't crack under the pressure like him and wants Kokoro to be his only sweetheart. Shinya and Akane both seek recognition and affections from others. Shinya seeks those because he was adopted into a prestigious family and feels like he has a duty to fulfill and a lot to live up to. About Akane, I don't really like this story arc and didn't pay much attention to her if I'm to be honest. But from what I could gather, she has a lot of boyfriends, and when her ex-boyfriends find a new girlfriend, she acts against the ex-boyfriend because she can or something like that. Give me a break, I'm a dateless loser, so I'm not good at understanding all this double timing girlfriend-boyfriend stuff. And that's just half of the game. After all the human party members are introduced, you enter the second chapter of the game and need to pick one out for human party members to go through the routes. This last half of the game is where most of the mysteries laid out from the beginning of the game start getting answers, and it's also where the main character being silent start becoming a bigger problem. I can't go into details because spoilers obviously, but the latter half of the game has the emotional baggage being put onto the main character's soldiers, and him being silent means that he just can't carry out the needed act to convey the emotional weight the game was trying so desperately to appeal to the players, so everything just falls really flat. I also kinda dislike how each of the 4 routes in the latter half of the game only answers some of the mysteries, while also raising some new questions, and also end on very unsatisfying notes. Only after you've cleared all 4 routes do you somewhat get the big picture and gain access to the true ending. So ultimately, it just kinda feels like a retreat of the first half of the game in terms of story beat. The difference is that now you can do the story arcs in any order of your liking before going into the final chapter and get the true ending. And even then, the true ending sucks, to be honest. It just has the benefit of answering all of the important mysteries that were raised throughout the game. And the most disappointing thing about the story to me is how the game markets itself with lines like
Follow your ego,
or
prove that you live by your own rules.
the story really doesn't give you any chance to display your own self at all, and in order to progress through the story, you need to follow the rules laid out by the games. Even at certain points, the dialogue choices even have 3 options of the same freaking thing, like it's mocking me for even dare to think that free will is a thing. The best thing that I could say about this game's visual is that it performs pretty solid most of the time. I played the game on the PS4 original model by the way, in case you're curious, and the layout and designs of the Shin Megami Academy looks like it could be an actual place somewhere and not just a video game dungeon with a school theme, but that's it. The character models are only okay-ish at best, and they just don't translate Sobin's character designs and arts very well into 3D. In case you don't know who Sobin is, he's most famous for being the illustrator for the Overlord light novel series and the character designer for the VTuber Nina Kosaka of Nijisanji Inc. As you can see from the drawings I'm showing here, there's a certain feel to Sobin's drawings. I am not smart enough to dish out the right vocabularies to describe it, but there's a certain edginess, a certain darkness-inducing feel to his drawings, while the free models are just, for the lack of better word, very lifeless. The worst part about the visual is the animations. The characters have very limited animations that they can do, and they are repeated over and over again all throughout the game. It's so bad that there isn't even an animation to show the character grabbing Vanita's ears and have to resort to fade to black and showing the aftermath of Vanita's ears already being grabbed. The animations in combat are also very limited to just some simple slashes or hand waving. There aren't even dynamic camera shots to make the combat look interesting. Like, not to diss on the devs or anything, because animating stuff and making video games are hard, but come on man, I've seen PS2 games with better animations than this. The characters can't even do proper expressions either, like what the hell? The looks of the other world also don't fare very well, as almost all of them are just a bunch of floating wooden or tile floors, or blocks of walls or debris and some other random access, with no clear personality to them, and the only visually differences between different stages are the lighting, so it just makes everything very boring visually speaking. A not very fun little fact, I bought this game knowing almost nothing about it except for the fact that it's a JRPG and it has a collaboration with Kamitsubaki Studio. Yep, I bought the game solely because I heard some of my favorite V singers are singing songs for it. Imagine my face when I find out that their songs are used like this. I know that the devs probably used a lot of money to secure the songs for themselves and need to make the best out of their wasted money somehow, but is shoving J-pop songs into long, intense, drawn-out boss battles really the best thing that they could have come up with? Like, come on man. The second worst offender to me is the boss fight against Akane, which features a song that is so out of place that I have to question whether the devs did actually playtest the game with the songs on to see if they fit or not. Just one more reason why I don't like Akane and her story arc. Though, to be fair, if you look up the lyrics, it does fit the character and the story arc the game was trying to tell, but bitch, your players are in the middle of a boss fight. Even if the players are Japanese experts, most of them don't have enough brain cells to decipher what the lyrics are trying to convey, especially when that song features a freaking rap. And that is just the second worst offender. There's an even worse example of a song that just doesn't fit the context it's used in like at all. Like, I was so freaking mad when I first heard the song being played in-game because I actually really like that song. Fuck, I want to show the scene and rant about it so bad, but it would be a really big spoiler. Man. You know what I'm talking about when you reach that part of the game, provided you decided to buy the game at all and persist enough to reach the part of the game that is. Anyway, I'm not saying the vocal songs are bad, most of them are quite good and very catchy in my opinion, and those that aren't catchy are the more emotional ones. Some actually do fit to be a boss theme like the one used when fighting against Mabuki, because it features a slow beat that fits the pacing of a tactical game, and it's also a very melancholic song that fits with the theme of the boss or someone who is trapped in an endless cycle of suffering.
わかった
I risk getting copyright claims by actually playing snippets of the song in this video, so please check the songs out if you can. Links to the songs as well as the singers' YouTube channels are in the description. What about the actual soundtrack, the non-vocal ones though, you might be wondering? Well, I don't particularly have any strong feelings for those. I don't think they're necessarily bad as a whole. They are pretty good tracks that really alleviate the atmosphere of the scene, like this track that plays during the tense moments.
一橋くん
霧の広がるところへの立ち入りは禁止したはずだ。
Or this track that plays during the scenes that dive into the thoughts and memories of the antagonists.
魂なんて虚構の存在、心なんて体が生み出したささやかな化学反応の一つ。
To me, the things that hurt the overall soundtrack the most is its lack of variety. When the situation calls for it, the designated song would be played with no variant to it, and due to the formulaic story beat, the music is also played out very predictably and repetitively, that the songs kinda lose their magic at some points because I've been exposed to them for way too much already. For this segment, I initially wrote something along the line of I enjoyed the game despite its flaws, and then listed out what I found was enjoyable and has potential to be improved upon. But after seeing the true ending, seeing how the game actually ends and seeing how bad it misused the vocal songs, I said fuck this game, I didn't have fun with it at all. Yes, I am so mad about the vocal songs that it overwrote what I feel about everything else in the game, and I refuse to listen to anyone defending the game's ways of using the vocal songs. Monark is a very unique game with a very good atmosphere to it, but unfortunately it's played with very questionable game design choices and looks like the game was made on a shoestring budget, possibly because the devs wasted most of their money to buy all the vocal songs from Kamizubaki's studio. On one hand, I'd advise you to look the other way because there are a lot of better JRPGs out there, but at the same time, I also would like to see this game sell well so they can have an actual budget to make a proper sequel or a spiritual successor somehow, because beneath all the flaws and questionable game design choices, I see the potential of a good game at its core. If I were to give scores to the game, it could be something like this.